What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're here for Week 8 NFL picks and predictions. Last week we had a pretty strong week, going 11-2 so far on the week. We still have the two Monday night games happening tonight. I have the Lions and the Texans winning, but our season total is now 71, 34, and 1 on the season, which is a 67.6% win rate on the year. And then teams we have on bye this week are the Cardinals, the Lions, the Jaguars, the Raiders, the Rams, the Seahawks. So we have only 13 matchups to pick from this week, but I think it's a pretty good slate of games. I feel pretty good about it. So let's get started with the Thursday night game. We have the Vikings at the Chargers. And I haven't loved these Thursday night games. You know, the underdog has won the past 3 games, so it's been tough to pick these. We saw that last week with Cincinnati beating Pittsburgh. So my confidence level is a little bit low here, but I am siding with the Chargers. I think that Carson Wentz coming into this game isn't going to be 100%. I think he's still dealing with a shoulder injury. We saw him throw the ball 42 times last week against the Eagles. I thought that was a pretty physical loss. And, I think Wentz is regressing a little bit, so I do like that for the Chargers in this matchup. And I also expect the Chargers to get a little bit healthier. I think Joe Alt is going to be back for this team, and they desperately need that. Last week the Chargers were down to their 6th and 7th string tackles, so they definitely need to get healthy. But I think this Vikings secondary, I think it can be exploited. I think the Chargers have pretty good receivers in Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, even Gadsden, the rookie tight end coming on. I think the Chargers win this game in Los Angeles. Now I'm going to give you guys my upset picks and potential upset picks just right off the bat here. I think the Panthers have a really good chance of upsetting the Bills. Only 5% of people have that, so that would be a huge upset. I think there's good value in that pick. You're looking at the Bills. They're coming off a bye, but they're also coming off of 2 losses to Atlanta and New England. I don't have the confidence to go with the Panthers here. I am going to go with the Bills. But I think the Bills can definitely get ran on. We saw that last week with Bijan, who had, I think 170 yards versus the Bills. You're looking at Rico Dowdle for the Panthers. He's played great all season, so I think that he has a chance to really go off in this game. So I think that there's a possibility the Panthers win there, especially at home in Carolina, where I think they play much better. Then we're looking at the Cowboys at the Broncos. I do have the Cowboys winning this game. Only 25% of people have that, but there's going to be upsets every single week in the NFL. So give me the Cowboys. I think there's good value in this pick. I think the Cowboys can outscore anybody in this league. And now with CeeDee Lamb, being back on this offense, I think that adds just that much more to the offense. And I'm looking at the Denver offense. I think it's struggling a little bit. We saw last week they were 4 for 13 on third downs. Knicks had about 25 incompletions in that game. So I think that there's a little bit of problems on that Denver offense. And I know that there's problems with the Dallas defense, of course. But I just like the Cowboys to, outscore the Broncos here. I don't love picking the Cowboys on the road. I think they play much better at home. But that's just, what an upset pick is. So give me the Cowboys there. Then we have the Steelers. I have the Steelers winning this game against the Packers in Pittsburgh. Only 35% of people have the Steelers right now. I think Aaron Rodgers has played pretty good this season. I think if anything, it's kind of the defense that's been, losing games for the Steelers. I think that the Steelers defense has been, a pretty expensive unit this offseason. They haven't really been able to cover anybody in their secondary, so they have problems. And I think the Packers could exploit it. But I haven't loved Jordan Love this season, and I'm looking at, Josh Jacobs coming into this game. I know he's a great running back. I love him. But he's definitely not 100% coming into this game with a calf injury. So give me the Steelers. I think there's good value there as well in Pittsburgh at home. So now we move on to the other games. We have the Dolphins at 1-6. At the Falcons 3-3. I think the Falcons, they've put up some pretty good defensive performances the past 2 weeks versus the 49ers and the week before that against the Bills. I do think the Falcons offense has been pretty lackluster this season, for all the talent they have on offense with Bijan and Drake London. But I expect them to get the job done in Atlanta. I think they play much better in Atlanta as well. And the Dolphins, they're just falling apart. I wouldn't be surprised if we get news of a head coaching firing or a quarterback change there. Then we have the Jets at 0-7 at the Bengals 3-4. I think that Flacco with, the targets that he has and Higgins and Jamar Chase. I think that he's able to get the job done in Cincinnati. The Bengals, they have to get as many wins as they can in hopes that Joe Burrow comes back for the season. You're looking at the Jets. They benched Fields last week, so they're definitely in quarterback turmoil. I don't even know who's starting this game. It might be Tyrod Taylor, but regardless, give me the Bengals to win that game in Cincinnati. Then we have the Browns at 2-5 at the Patriots 5-2. I really like the Patriots here. I think they're definitely an ascending team this season. Drake May has been incredible the last few weeks. I think he only had like 2 incompletions in the game last week. The one thing I will say is this Patriots schedule, though, has been pretty easy. It's one of the easier schedules in the NFL. So I think this Browns defense is probably going to be one of the better defenses they play this season. But I can't have any confidence picking the Browns. I think that Dylan Gabriel is not all that great. I think he really limits this offense. I think that, as soon as the Browns get into third and long situations, I think they really struggle. And I don't really see Dylan Gabriel throwing the ball down the field all that much. I do like the rookie running back for the Browns in Judkins, but, I just like the Patriots at home much more. I feel pretty comfortable with that pick. Then we have the Giants at 2-5, at the Eagles 5-2. The Eagles have struggled this season, and I think that their offense gets cold. I think they kind of lose rhythm on offense at a lot of points throughout the season, or throughout games. But you're looking at Saquon, and he's still really not getting involved much. I think that's kind of a problem. But I think this Giants run defense, it can be exploited. I would like to see Saquon, being used more in this game. I think he is, and I think the Eagles use him to win the game. And you're looking at, Jackson Dart. He still hasn't won a game on the road this season. He lost in New Orleans and now Denver. I think that streak continues for another away game in Philadelphia. Then we go to, where do we have here? The Bears at the Ravens. I think the Bears, they're on a 4-game winning streak, which is really impressive. I think their defense has gotten a little bit better as well in recent weeks. And I think that Swift is a legitimate, threat in the backfield. But to me, this kind of feels like the Ravens' bounce-back game. I think their schedule kind of gets a lot easier. You're looking at the Ravens having to play the Dolphins, the Browns, the Jets, the Bengals twice. So I think they're going to start to get rolling here and kind of start getting some wins. They're coming off their bye now. So I think that this is the point where they got a little bit healthier, and they're going to start to make their, push for the second half of the season. So give me the Ravens to win that game at 1-5. Then we have the Titans at 1-6, at the Colts 6-1. The only reason there's a little bit of doubt in this game is because it's a divisional game in the AFC South. Those games can be a little bit weird at times. But give me the Colts at 6-1. I think that, they're firing on all cylinders. And you're looking at Cam Ward, for the Titans. He has a lot of turnovers. He has 5 interceptions. He has 5 lost fumbles this season to only 4 touchdowns. So this team is really struggling, and they didn't look any better last week with Mike McCoy at head coach. Then you have the Commanders at the Chiefs, and I like the Chiefs here a lot. The Commanders, I think they play a lot of man-to-man, and they don't really cover all that well. And I think that that's kind of a bad recipe for Mahomes and, his slate of receivers that he has coming into this game. And you're looking at Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. They just haven't been able to stay healthy this season. And he's banged up again. So I think that, a lot of that like NFC Championship magic from last season kind of weared off for Washington. And I'm curious to see the injury report later in the week. Because, Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel, I would like to see if they're playing in this game. But I have a feeling that maybe the Commanders just kind of wait for a later week in the season to push all their cards in. But with that said, I think that's all the games that we have here for the week. So I will see you guys later. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.